Good evening and welcome to the April 18th regular meeting of the Garrison Union Free School District Board of Education. Our first agenda item, as always, is the Pledge of Allegiance, so if you would join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm not mistaken, we go straight to the good stuff. Laura, the superintendent's report.
Good evening, Garrison. Nice to see you. We have lots of shout outs, lots of good things happening in the district. I wanted to give a shout out to our very own James Hoke for connecting us to Brandon Del Pozo, the former Cold Spring resident and chief of police of Burlington, Vermont. It was an impromptu conversation that happened sort of within 24 hours, but he was able to come here with his team and help us further understand the opioid crisis locally, nationally, internationally. He brought facts, experience, and honesty to the table that I think was much appreciated by the community and staff that were present. He was able to speak to the issues in a real and accessible manner. And I want to thank Ray for his introductions and the support for it. And again, thank you, James, for bringing Brandon to us. So we hope that we'll continue conversations with him as well, whether they're in person or just online.
Can I ask how his perspective differed from that of the panel that we had, if at all?
Yes, you can. I want to be thoughtful in giving my answer, or an answer, but Laura can feel that as well. And this may be music to your ears in particular. He emphasized at various places throughout his remarks the importance of focusing law enforcement energies and all of the other relevant energies on this problem within the community. That he recognized that the issue of border control is an important one, but it's not one that we can affect here at the local level, and therefore, I guess the principle informing his remarks is one of subsidiarity, which is to say, do what you can locally, attack the problem with local resources if you're local, but the federal government focus on border control. I won't say that was the entirety of his remarks. So one, I think it would be obviously relevant and of interest to you. Anything else?
I like that he has a team where Vermont is pushing funding towards having a social worker on their team, which I don't know if that's here in New York, if that's a common practice. And that this person pushes into schools and talks about addictive behavior, just starting out at younger ages, such as how much are our kids on the screen, just sort of watching them and monitoring what they're doing, and celebrating family and having dinner together. So it sort of was able to talk to the parents in the community, saying we are all part of this, and there are small and large moves that we can make to raise awareness, inform, protect, save lives. I thought that was.
He also has a data analyst on his team.
Right.
Yep, he was there.
And they look at all kinds of data, where users, how things are being distributed. I think they also analyze physicians within Vermont who also prescribe X amount. So
it's a fascinating idea, and it's the same database is available anywhere, but I believe it was an NIH, might have been Medicare, a database. Basically shows the prescribing patterns of physicians in every state. Now it's Medicare, so it's older. It's an older constituency. It's also not exactly current. I think the most recent year for which there's data is 2014, but it still gives an absolute roadmap to where at least potential areas of overprescribing goes on in Vermont, and he has used that data. His analyst has made that data usable to him and others in the Burlington community and across the state, where they can have more effective conversations with overprescribers, identify them, and so forth. So it's one avenue of attack.
So we don't have to raise money to help the president build a border wall?
He did not mention that. This is another law enforcement officer who came before us and managed to speak for 45 to 50 minutes and did not mention the wall at all. Not unlike those others who have joined us recently. So anyway, Laura, what else we got?
Well, I also want to point out that it was nice that he was a resident of Cold Spring. He was able to talk about our streets and the hangout places and scooping the loop and the sports, how important they are, our clubs, that we want our kids to be participating in them. And when there's extra time or to maybe scoop the loop, we don't want to make that a bad thing, but there's extra time to maybe look for trouble or there's boredom that's brewing. So we want to make sure that we have lots of activities for kids in the community, whether it's at school or during the weekends or at the rec center or wherever and however, to make sure that they're engaged and feeling valued and part of the community. Good messages.
Mhm.
I wanted to give Mike Williams a high five, as well as Jennifer Kirkpatrick. They provided 2 excellent professional development sessions to our staff. One was about mindfulness, so Mike was teaching staff members how they can use mindfulness for themselves as well as bring it into the classroom. And Jennifer Kirkpatrick was talking about conference sharing and RTI, which is response to intervention for our kids. So she gave, and it focused around math and reading, and she gave staff members lots of good intervention strategies and tools and resources that they can use immediately in their classroom. And both are directly connected to our district priorities, the social emotional learning priority as well as the literacy priority. I also wanted to, I shared with the board in the Friday memo that I wanted to give a high five to Debbie and Amy Kuchera, their 3rd grade teachers, and their 3rd graders. Our library magically turned into a wax museum, and it was filled with notable women figures who are our students. They had little blue dots on their hands, and you would just press the dot, and they would give you the life and the struggles and the highlights of notable women's lives. I was able to meet Malala, Hillary Clinton, Rosa Parks, Anne Frank, Abigail Adams, Amelia Earhart, Mary Shelley, Sacagawea, and Helen Keller, and there were more in the room. The room was filled with parents, grandparents, siblings, our wonderful children, and so it was a lovely way to see our kids at work, seeing learning coming alive, and again, it's another district priority of around literacy. I also feel it's a social emotional because kids really felt confident and successful. They had to perform, they had to memorize a bit, they had to do research, so there were a lot of things going on in that work they were doing before and in the presentation on the ground. I just want to put a plug in for the 8th grade team. They're doing their 1st annual duck run. This is to raise funds for their Boston trip. So on Saturday, April 29th at 12 o'clock at the Walter Hoving Home, there will be ducks that were bought for $5 by community members, parents, and students, and they will be floating down Snake Hill, starting, let's see, at the Large Falls on Snake Hill Road, and then they will float down to Avery, and the winners will receive prizes, and we will all gain some funding for our Boston trip for our 8th graders. So if you want to buy a duck, let us know. Kathy Clark or Barbara D'Alessio, they are the co-leaders, the 8th grade advisors, and they can be contacted, or you can contact me if you want to buy a duck and get in the game and help us out at the same time. Bravo to GSEF and their spring thaw. It was another huge success. Some highlights I wanted to include. The spring thaw raised over $29,000. I believe $29,281 to be exact. One single item fundraiser, which was really based on a need that we identified and a more of an urgent need, and it's for our audio-visual improvements. And at that fundraiser, they raised $3,000 with the hope over time to raise $10,000 for us to enhance and improve audio-visual when we give our performances and have events. So it's much needed and much appreciated. Also, some of our students performed during that event, so we were very proud of them. The Phillipstown Garden Club has offered to donate a Princeton elm to the district. The Garden Club members will provide our kindergartners with an elm tree lesson, and then during the week of May 8th, our kindergartners will participate in helping plant this 500-pound, 14-foot tree, which is Plan A is to put it near the courts up there. Plan B would be near the garden, just depending on whether we have rocks in the way or there's some kind of planting issues.
Do we have to accept the donation, and is that on our
No,
agenda? We don't.
no,
Normally we do.
you're right.
So why don't we have to do that this time? Anyway, it's not a rhetorical question.
Can we make a?
Typically, the board, if there's
We have to
donated
accept the
goods.
donation, right?
the board has to approve that.
Yes.
We
And
can
we're
do it-
accepting a tree, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Can we make a motion to?
I move that we accept the tree.
Well, all right.
And it just sort of happened, so you're right. I didn't think
You
of
know what,
putting it on
let's,
the-
no, we can do it retroactively at the next meeting, yes, don't worry about it. But I'm just, that's, yeah.
Yep,
let's
and
just-
actually, it won't be planted until the week after, so
Fine,
there's
so let's
time.
just put it on
Thank
the
you for
agenda
that.
for next time.
Trees in limbo.
And lastly, just our newsletter. Just our newsletter, just using the feedback from the board, specifically David, community and parents, on making sure that we're getting our news out to the community, and not just the inside of the community and parents, which is very important, but beyond, just to ensure, let people know that there are great things happening. This is where your money's going, your taxpayers' money is going, and if anybody ever wants to come in and help with us, whether it's through chaperoning, or help plant a tree, or work in our garden, or help with workshops or sessions in our school forest. So this will be our third electronic Garrison newsletter, which we hope to send out every month, because there's so much going on, and as I'm writing it, there's so much in it. So if we keep it monthly, we'll keep it manageable for people as well. And we also want to make sure that we're using that language in in Facebook. We're seeing it on our website, that all of the information that we're providing to the community is cohesive. And it's speaking the same message around our mission and our district priorities. So please know that your feedback, your suggestions, your recommendations, and of course, commendations are welcome. Thank you.
Did you cover in substance John's remarks in the ordinance, because we still have principal's remarks,
Yes, he's
but we
not.
don't have a principal.
Yes, and
So you
and
covered
much
in
of that,
substance.
yeah.
Fine, okay. I thought so. So good, so then we move quickly, briskly to the consent agenda, items B through I. It's resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District approves the consent agenda items B through I as presented. I will go through them briskly. First item B is accept the minutes of the March 28th and April 5th, 2017 board meetings. Those are both in your package. Approve the appointment of Sarah Garrison to the position of long-term substitute elementary teacher effective April 7, 2007, until such time as notice of termination of the appointment is provided but no later than June 23rd, 2017, according to the terms of policy 6221. The next 5 items all deal with procedural steps that we have to take in order to have an election in May. First is approve the appointment of Sue Tudor as the Chief Election Inspector for the May 16, 2017 budget vote and election at the rate of $11 an hour. Item E is approve the appointment of Karen Lindros, Dorothy Gilman, Donna Anderson, and Gail Alucio as election inspectors for the May 16, 2017 budget vote and election at the rate of $10 an hour. Item F is approve the appointment of Sue Tudor and Earl Gunderson as voting machine inspectors representing Putnam County for work at the May 16, 2017 budget vote and election at the rate of $15.63 an hour. I want to come back to that with a question in a moment. Item G, appointment of voting machine technicians representing Putnam County. Approve the appointment of Christopher Primavera and Carl Kircher as voting machine technicians representing Putnam County for work related to the May 16, 2017 budget vote and election at a rate not to exceed $30 an hour plus round-trip mileage as needed from the Board of Elections at the rate of $50.535 per mile. And lastly, on election-related materials, approve the appointment of John Kircher and Sarah Green as voting machine delivery personnel representing Putnam County delivery and pickup of voting machines for the May 16, 2017 budget vote and election at the rate of $20 an hour. Last item on the consent agenda is approve the mail finance lease agreement with Mailroom Finance Inc. /Neopost for a Hassler postage meter at the cost of $143.50 a month for 48 months. I haven't seen that one in a while. The question I have is the election inspector is being paid at $11 an hour, and that same person is being she's the voting machine inspector, at $15.63 an hour, does that mean that person gets $26.63 an hour for her presence
No,
there?
there's different responsibilities.
Okay.
1563 is because the voting machines are owned by the county, they are allowing us to use them for
Right.
our vote, and we have to hire people who are trained in the use, trained by the county in the use of the machines, and they are there at the machines during the entire vote to be able to run them.
Right, I got it.
And we have to pay them at the rate that the county tells us we have to pay.
$15.63 an hour. Right, but Sue Tudor,
Well, she has different responsibilities
understand.
as the election inspector.
no, I get that, but are we paying, does she get, I don't have anything against this, I'm just curious.
Are they-
Does she get paid twice, or does she get $15.63 an hour?
She gets $15.63 an hour while she's doing that county work, and $11 an hour when she's doing other things for us that come under the guise of election inspector.
They don't happen concurrently. They're separate tasks with separate hours.
No, I understand,
Some of the
well,
$11 an hour responsibilities occur before election day.
okay, all right, fair enough. What's the long-term substitute replacement, what's that about?
Third grade,
Third
teachers out.
grade.
Reasons.
Yeah, very good.
A question about that. How do we handle, what's the protocol when we've determined that a teacher is going to be on leave? What's the protocol for communicating with parents that are in contact with that particular teacher that there's going to be a shift?
Both the teacher contacted the parents, and John, principal, contacted the parents with the plan, and the introduction of the new substitute.
When is she beginning? She's begun already?
She started, yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about her, or?
I can bring, yeah, I don't have the specifics. We did post it on OLAS. We had a few people who responded. We interviewed 4 folks that we thought might be a good match. She shined. I believe she has 3rd grade experience and special ed.
She's certified.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. But I can show
Last
her.
name Garrison?
She changed
And her last name is Garrison,
Changed her name.
Very good.
for
Just
this
her.
purpose.
Suspicious. But okay, so, sometimes when we have teachers that are in multiple assignments, right? So it's the responsibility of the teacher and the principal to reach out to all members, or just their homeroom, or how does that work? I'm thinking of in case of where teachers might be handling maybe a different class for, let's say, social studies.
Right.
Maybe they're 3rd grade, but they might handle social studies somewhere else. Is that,
I believe both were communicated with,
Okay.
but I can check my facts.
okay, just curious.
Because we don't want to surprise people, we want to put people at ease, and we want them to know that there was a process
Mhm.
and an
Does-
informed decision to ensure that instruction is not interrupted,
Do you-
and that,
Do you prefer is it the protocol that the teachers inform the students? Or they inform the parents first and then inform the students? Or do you leave that to the discretion of the teacher to figure out how they want to handle that?
I don't know if it's a formal practice,
Right.
but it seems that teachers have had the conversation with students
First.
to let them know what's going on, and then reached out
Okay.
to the parents. And
Okay.
then the principal reached out with more information.
Okay.
Hey, by the way, before we took questions, I should have asked for a so moved on all of those consent agenda items.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Any other questions or discussion on the consent agenda? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
No abstentions, no nays. Excellent. We have one discussion item, and that is, we'll go through briskly as well, 2 sets of committee minutes, the Facilities Committee and the Safety and Wellness Committee. Both of those are in your packet. I was not at either of those meetings, so I can't speak to what's in the packet, but our usual practice is any board member who was at the meeting and who chooses to summarize may do so, but if none of us were there, Laura, if there's anything noteworthy you want to just talk about with respect to the minutes, otherwise we'll leave it to the members to read the attachments in their package.
James, you were at facilities. Is there
Oh, you
anything
were,
that you
sorry.
would like to highlight?
A robust discussion about the, potentialities and processes that one has to go through in a capital project. We looked at possible scopes, the overall process, timing in relation, with a keen eye on making sure that we're delivering a compelling argument, compelling message if we were to go down that road, and also with deep sensitivity toward the impact upon taxpayers and debt fall-off, et cetera.
The architects were there, right? No, I came in, it was, you guys were wrapping up just as we began our program. So the architects were there. My understanding was at the conclusion of that meeting, the facilities committee and/or the architects will come back with a fully fleshed out presentation and update where we are on those discussions sometime soon. Good, I'm looking forward to hearing that.
Still very much in process.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah, that's, I know,
Yeah.
I don't want to rush that, but it's just, it's good to know that's coming. All right, we have 2 action items.
Can I just
Oh, sir.
amend one other comment? There was some discussion about, scope of the project, and I think there was some talk about thinking thoroughly about the condition of the playground. I don't think this would be tangential to the scope of the project, but just simply in the facilities committee meeting, we brought up a question of the condition and services that the playground offers, et cetera. Okay, I just wanted to note that.
Sure. All right, if there's nothing else on the minutes, we have just 2 action items. One, we sort of alluded to before we convened, and that was the package that you have here. This is our approval of the Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES annual budget. Every constituent district goes through this exact same process, and they are approving it at their meetings to be held this week. So that you see the executive summary, which describes Garrison's contribution. We're not approving Garrison's contribution. We are approving the overall budget of Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES. I don't want to say this is a pro forma vote, and I don't think, no, it has to be approved, correct me if I'm wrong on this, Beth and/or Sue or Laura. It does not have to be a unanimous vote of all the constituent districts to be passed. It's simply a majority of the constituents. There was another vote that we had to do with them previously. You
It
recall?
had to do with
That-
capital.
That had to be capital,
it
that
was
had to be
capital.
unanimous. This does not.
Wow, that's
So
a
as
long
long
time
as,
ago,
I know. This does not, so a simple majority of the constituent districts approving this will accomplish what they want. So let me read the resolution, and I'll put it before you. Whereas the Board of Cooperative Educational Services of Putnam Northern Westchester County, here in Epic BOCES, has proposed its tentative administrative budget for the 2017-18 school year, July 1, 2017 through June 30, 2018. Now therefore be it resolved that the BOCES tentative administrative budget for the 2017-2018 school year in the amount of $9,002,302 be and hereby is approved by this board. And be it further resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District cast its vote for the following 3 candidates: Mary Kay Nilsson, Anita Feldman, and Richard Krebs for the Board of Cooperative Educational Services to fill the 3 vacancies. Their terms will run from July 1, 2017 to June 30, 2020. It is so moved.
I have a question. How are we supposed to cast an informed vote on this?
You can digest this.
Not in the time of the,
You can, you're right. You're absolutely right. You may then, if you feel you don't have sufficient information on which to proceed, you can abstain or vote no. I don't think we can table this motion. Let me ask a procedural question of Laura Beth, and this goes to, really is for Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES. When did we get all of this?
I think I actually got it mailed Monday.
Okay.
It may have been
Yeah,
mailed
it's a
to us
quick
late last
turnaround.
week.
Right.
We do have an annual meeting they had recently, I don't know if it was
So,
discussed.
I believe, yes.
The draft information though comes out in the fall.
Right. It's suffice to say, they go through a process not unlike what we do, where their board meets, they have they have budget presentations, the board has a chance to question the administrators, they hold budget workshops, they notice the public on the proposed budget and so forth. So it is not sufficient, I know, to satisfy your curiosity and what you probably want to know in order to make what you call an informed decision. They would say, I suspect, it's all been there before. Now, procedurally, if your point is we should have seen this stuff earlier and had a chance to ask more questions about it, I don't disagree. But the reality of the vote, of the question before us is, we either voted up or down, but it almost doesn't matter in as much as it requires simply a majority vote of the constituent members, and they always secure it.
Well, I'm going back and I'm trying to remember. Our services with BOCES are based on what we use, isn't it?
Yeah,
Predominantly.
Yeah, no, I asked this before.
It's
It
based on
is,
usage. Am I right, Sue? Or
It-
is BOCES our costs with BOCES
Well,
relate more
there's
to
the-
our usage?
There's
What we
a-
use them for?
There's an administrative
Right.
cost and a capital cost, which we really don't have much control over, because
Right.
that's divvied up between all the component
Mhm.
districts. But then it is what we partake in, yes.
Right.
We have
Okay.
choice on, we have choice on most of the stuff anyway.
On the services.
But
And do we still get back, I know we used to get back a portion of the administrative fee. It used to be what, 15%, 10%? I don't know what it's at these days, so.
It's a small portion. I mean, on average, our BOCES aid is at 0.36
0.36.
for our overall expenses. And actually, the first line in this little pamphlet, it shows you what our BOCES aid, our estimated BOCES aid would be.
Right.
And it depends on what we use and what we don't use.
Right.
And it changes sometimes just with whatever students we have going to certain programs. We might have to do student evaluation. So, you know, these are all estimates, just like, you know, any other budget.
I guess, you know, it probably is not a controversial issue, but I just think that we ought to send a message that
well, there are two ways to send a message. We can express in the form of a letter from the superintendent that the board would have expected additional opportunities for examination, that it is unreasonable. I'm not drafting a letter for you. One could say it's unreasonable to ask the board to approve the budget based on documentation that was delivered to the district on Monday and we're voting on Tuesday. That's one way of sending a message. The other way would be to vote your conscience with respect to the resolution before us. As you said, it's not a controversial issue, but there are two ways to send a message. I would say, since we only have a quorum here, an abstention or a no vote is effectively a vote against. Correct?
Sure.
Yes. So I will leave it to you. If there's no other question on this, I'll simply ask for a so moved, or a second.
Well, I do have another question.
Okay.
Are you comfortable writing a letter to these guys and letting them know that this procedure is a little hardly transparent? I mean, we should just have a chance to understand what we're voting on. I mean, if you're comfortable writing a letter to them, then I'll vote for it.
I think I think it's fair to say. You had mentioned earlier that Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES offered and would send somebody over at any time to explain this, which is fine if they meant before this,
Yeah.
but to come now, come after
Right.
the fact. So
Do we get candidate statements with this?
there are 3 seats and 3
Three
candidates,
seats.
so it really doesn't matter.
This is part of Putin's plan.
Right.
This is a Soviet election.
This is something that, just careful, because there are only 2 seats on the Garrison where we only have 2 nominees.
And then I also think
Okay,
it's a
that-
meeting, an annual meeting, right?
Okay.
The candidate information was in your packet last time.
Right, that's what I thought. I remember.
Oh, the candidates.
Thank you,
All
thank
right.
you for that clarification. Okay.
Other questions or comments?
Nope.
I still need a so moved.
So moved.
I need a
Second.
second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Good questions, David, honestly. All right,
And I can bring that to, we have a superintendent meeting every month, so I can bring that.
I think it's worth mentioning to Jim and his staff that it's, you know,
Get us the
it's
stuff
not a
before we
rubber,
have to
not a
vote on
rubber
it.
stamp board.
Yeah.
Next item is something we have discussed, we discussed in the prelude to this meeting, and we discussed at our previous meeting, and Dennis and the PCNR recounted accurately and in detail in the most recent report of our last meeting, and that is the approval of a ballot proposition related to the creation of a new capital reserve fund. We discussed it at our last meeting, and we specifically tabled it so that we might vote on it separate and apart from the budget, which we approved, our upcoming year's budget, which we approved at our last meeting. But this is the resolution this is the language as it will appear on the ballot, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah,
Yes,
it is, okay,
yes,
fine.
it is.
So, resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District approves the proposition to be placed on the ballot at the May 16, 2017 vote as follows. Now, this is the proposition language. Shall the Board of Education, the Garrison Union Free School District, be authorized to, 1, establish a capital reserve fund effective July 1, 2017 for the purpose of financing the construction of and general improvements, reconstruction, renovations, or additions to the district's buildings, including site work and the acquisition of original furnishings, equipment, machinery, or apparatus required for the purpose for which such buildings are to be used, and 2, transfer to the new capital reserve fund effective July 1, 2017, the funds remaining in the current capital reserve fund in the amount of $216,328.57, and 3, annually deposit into the capital reserve fund such portion of the general fund and unallocated fund balance as determined by the Board of Education. The ultimate amount, that's period, a question mark. The ultimate amount of the capital reserve fund shall be $1 million, and the probable duration of the fund is 10 years. Before we have discussion, I need a so moved.
So moved.
I need a second.
Second?
Question or comments on this? I think there's a fact sheet on this. It is only worth reiterating for the benefit of anybody who may be watching here, because I think we've all, at least on the board, acquainted ourselves with the issue. We had a capital reserve fund that was created in 2007. It had a 10-year lifespan. That 10 years will expire this June 31. In that fund was a remaining balance of $216,000. We have to approve, and the voters have to approve, the creation of a new fund into which we can transfer the balance from the old fund into the new fund for substantially the same purposes as the old fund was created to serve. And at our discretion, over the course of the next 10 years, should we decide to do so, continue to fund that capital reserve fund up to a maximum of $1 million. It doesn't say we're going to do it, it just means we have the authority in which to do it. It is also worth noting, and Beth, Sue, and Laura can correct me if I'm wrong on this, any expenditures out of this fund that we are about to create are still subject to voter, are going to be subject to voter approval. Is that, do I have that right? I believe.
Yes.
So, we are not only creating a fund, we're creating a fund with a fundamental check on it, which is disbursements from it for any of the specified purposes still have to be approved by the voters. So, having said all that, are there any questions or comments on this
I
proposition?
just have a question
Yes.
for Sue, and I don't know, you may or may not know the answer to this. Do you remember how much the fund was when we established it back
The
then?
original
Yeah.
establishment, I want to say that,
It-
ballpark, I think it started out about, 550,000, somewhere in that.
So we spent just about half of it in a year doing all of those renovations.
And some of the renovations that we did, were, helped, we had Excel funds that helped pay for the roof, and we had, some special grant that helped pay for the shed that was put in, so we had some outside monies that helped foster those projects as well.
There are no other questions on this. All those in favor? Aye. No abstentions, no nays. Excellent. That's good. So that will be, look for that on the ballot on May 16th. And fingers crossed that everybody has read Dennis's reports, watched the tape, read the fact sheet, and will have no trouble approving this.
We'll also have incurrence too.
It'll be incurrence too.
Before then.
The only thing I would say is you're going to make sure we go over that language with Chris, because you don't want to be in a position, we can't be in a position of advocating one way or another with respect to this, the question. You can't advocate for the budget, you can't advocate for a candidate, you can't advocate for voter propositions. You can simply render a very factual description of what it's about. So, even though we would love to see this passed. So, with that, public comment. Anyone? We have members of the public.
Yeah. Seems pretty sensitive. I don't.
Stand as far back as you like.
Where's good? Where can you all hear me without?
That's perfect.
Yeah, that's good.
That's actually
Is
quite
that
good.
all right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm here tonight because I want to, I feel compelled really to give you a reaction to the roundtable that was held on the 28th. I wish I could have attended the subsequent one, but my work schedule didn't allow on such short notice. First of all, thank you for hosting it. It's the events like that that are integral in determining how organizations.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I am interrupting. Sorry.
That's
Could
fine.
you just introduce yourself?
Oh,
please?
of course. My name is Melanie Matero. I am a Phillipstown resident of 25 years, as well as a local business owner. I spent the 20 years in Cold Spring and now the last 5 in Garrison. Raised 4 children in Phillipstown. Sadly, my youngest son did die of the disease of addiction 3 years ago. So while I very much understand many of you clutching to statistics, I hope that you can always do that and never have to deal with this experientially. And so understand that, of course, is the perspective that my comments will address. So I do appreciate you having the round table. It really helps determine how individuals and organizations can be most proactive and supportive in battling the drug epidemic. I don't know what your takeaway was, but for me, the roundtable was a painful reminder that stigma, fear, and misunderstanding still thrive within our community. It also reinforced the truth that despite public discussion, good intention, and professional expertise, if there isn't a drastic change in how we fundamentally think about this epidemic, we will not be able to curtail it, and our loved ones will continue to die at an astounding rate. There is a lot of talk these days, but unfortunately talk does not guarantee understanding or acceptance. To truly tackle the drug problem, we must accept that addiction is a disease, not a choice, that it could strike any of us, and that even good people develop addiction. These critical points were completely lost at the roundtable. When people of power, influence, and experience make offhanded comments like D.A. Tendy, stating that thankfully he didn't have to worry about what was on his kids' phones because he had good kids, it revealed the gaping divide between what is talked about and the actual perceptions still ingrained in us. No one at the roundtable confronted him then, nor when he chose the most insensitive statements to share during his answer regarding Narcan. You must realize that there were some in attendance that night who are fighting a disease that is ravaging them mind, body, and soul. Instead of feeling that their community is closer to understanding their condition and fighting along with them, they were told in unintended but no less brutal terms that they are bad, they are criminals, and the jury is still out as to whether they are worthy of life-saving medication. The roundtable focused heavily on law enforcement, and I don't understand why. You educate children, kindergarten through 8th grade. Wouldn't prevention through education be a more obvious focus? I'm sure you realize that no addict takes their first pill on Friday and is then stealing or dealing to support their addiction on Saturday. There's so much that can be done between the intro to the farm party and prison. Addiction has a progression just like other diseases. On the local level, it's only when we don't educate well enough and don't provide adequate acute medical care or long-term support that the safety net of the law becomes critical. Imagine if Alzheimer's sufferers could not receive consistent medical treatment until after their condition had advanced to the point where they were wandering off and trespassing or shoplifting, at which time they could finally be arrested and remanded to treatment. Everyone agrees that would be ridiculous, but that's what we're doing. Perhaps the true crime is that we as a society are continuing to allow and even expect law enforcement to treat a medical issue. The bottom line is we will never arrest our way out of this problem. Perhaps most upsetting that evening was the realization that not once, not one single time, was the word disease mentioned. Our loved ones, specifically our children, are dying of a disease. They may begin by experimenting socially or self-medicating or being prescribed legal opioids. And while some will be able to stop, some will not. The difference is in the person's brain, not in the person's character. I guarantee you, not one of them is ever trying to become an addict. When we can discuss and treat people suffering from addiction the same way as we do those suffering from diabetes or asthma or epilepsy, then and only then will we be ready and able to battle the drug epidemic head on. I know it's still difficult to accept that addiction is similar to other incurable diseases, but think about this. Both addiction and diabetes are often initiated and exacerbated by poor choices. In the case of diabetes, we try to educate, and if that fails, we don't judge. We expect medical treatment to be readily available and covered by insurance. Why don't we demand the same for addiction? Each time a diabetic sufferer has a diabetic event, which is really a relapse, they receive community sympathy and medical treatment, no matter how many times they need it. If an addiction sufferer has a relapse, their failure is whispered about throughout the community. The insurance company generally refuses to pay for additional treatment, and the only advice many experts can offer is to hope the symptoms of this disease become severe enough for an arrest. Please think about this disparity. Please be horrified. You are a board of education. Focus on understanding addiction and then use your talents to educate. Let law enforcement have their own roundtables to discuss their areas of expertise. And of course, by all means, work together with them when it maximizes positive impacts. But your weapons in this battle are your educational programs and practices that can and will make great strides towards saving our community from the deadly effects of this epidemic. The great news is you already have champions of this cause. Laura Mitchell is fantastic. Listen to Michael Williams. He was terrific at the roundtable. He gets it. He will steer you in the right direction. And there are so many in the community who are more than willing to assist. We can do this, and we have to do this. And I thank you for your continued commitment to this battle.
Thank you very much.
Can I just say, I was very moved by that, and I agree with you about Laura and about Mike Williams, and I also felt that that round table left a lot to be desired. And I really appreciate what you said. And my question for you is, what specifically, are there more specific things that you would have us do as essentially proxies for the young people of Garrison, or mentors?
There are many things. I think what we have to do, as perhaps was spoken about a little bit tonight, was we need to find both the small things and the big things that each person can individually do. If you're a community member and you have a business, can you give a teenager a job? If you as an average citizen are going to a new doctor and that doctor doesn't ask you on the myriad of forms you have to fill out whether or not you have any family predisposition to addiction, you can ask them why they're not asking that question. Mm-hmm. You can host programs for parents and say, listen, we can't say don't do drugs. It would be like saying don't eat and expect that to curtail diabetes. You certainly can't say don't do drugs and then have parents going home and giving one sibling the prescription that the other sibling didn't finish, because there's so many things that we can give parents as tools so that they're not sending a mixed message. We need to start children at a very young age understanding the genetic dispositions that they might have and the uniquenesses that they have because of their hereditary. You're going to have blue eyes, you tell the kindergartner, because I have blue eyes. You're going to have a great singing voice because your aunt has a great singing voice. And as they get older, you can start talking about things like asthma and epilepsy and ultimately addiction. You can talk about mental illness as feelings in the beginning, on and on and on. Yes.
Do you have reason to believe that doctors locally are overprescribing opioids?
Absolutely. I don't know that they're doing it intentionally. I think that it doesn't, but it doesn't matter. I knew that my son had a genetic predisposition. I did not know, because I have been very blessed with good health, that the painkillers being prescribed to him were an opioid. He blew out his knee at age 15. He needed an ACL replacement. He was prescribed an opioid. If that doctor had asked me, would it ultimately have saved his life? I don't know. But we wouldn't have flipped the switch right then. Doctors are not doing that. 80% of the kids becoming addicted are being prescribed these painkillers. You don't need it.
So the question is, and it's a real question, I'm not being rhetorical about this, is we certainly don't need Sheriff Smith to oversee the medical profession. That would be a very successful strategy. So how do we get that kind of oversight of doctors here and throughout the country, for that matter, but here, since we're talking about managing this locally?
I think it's grassroots. I think it's going to come from each individual saying to the dentist, why are you prescribing my child's 30 painkillers when they're getting their wisdom teeth out and they might need 3 of them? What I think we need to each individually demand that the doctors answer for why they're prescribing, what they're prescribing, and the amounts that they're prescribing it.
I just wanted to say, thank you for that, and I would like, if you could submit that letter either electronically,
Absolutely.
because you've probably mangled it a bit.
Well, and it's also in like 42 font.
Yeah. I just wanted to say that please feel free to forward it to the board.
I will.
And I wanted to say that I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you. I hope never anybody ever has to say that to any of you. Friday would have been my son's 28th birthday. On his 25th birthday, the family gathered, and instead of having birthday cake, we buried him on his birthday.
The pain that you're experiencing is something, that's close to me, and my friends growing up, so I'm very much aware of what it means to live within it. I wanted to say that, as David has sort of indicated, that the panel was constructed as give us a sense of voices, right? Some personalities dominated more than we'd like.
And I completely
And I think that there were structural reasons why the night went the way it did. One is when you have a facilitator, you don't always have control over the matter. We submitted questions. A lot of them were based upon education. A lot of them was based upon, at least the questions I submitted in advance, but they were not selected, I don't think. I think where the conversation started with questions about gateway drugs, and the law enforcement stepped in, and from there it had a minimal thing. I just want you to know that not all the comments were reflect either the board's consideration or the members of this board as individuals, their view of it at all. That there might be great discrepancy in that when someone is an elected official running for office, sometimes they tend to take it, whatever opportunities, and they are passionate. They are passionate about this, and they might be not. We may not agree, but I would not say that they are not passionate about it. I'm not correcting. I'm just saying that they don't necessarily reflect my position.
I acknowledge that, and I think it's a difficult position even for those panelists who were, let's say, from St. Christopher's, who at times are going to seek funding and other
Mhm.
considerations from politicians, so do
Right.
they necessarily in a public forum want to
Right.
start contradicting
Right.
them? But, you know, when you talk about statistics, there's so many
Right.
statistics that can be asked about. For instance, St. Christopher's is great at saying that they have 180 beds. That night, and most nights, there's not a single bed available.
Right.
You know, that's.
I wanted to point to a
That-
couple-
That does speak to the scale of the problem, I would say, doesn't it?
Right.
Well, it is, and that would be an interesting statistic to ask them.
And not-
On any given night or in any given month, what percentage are you turning away versus giving admission to? My son tried 4 or 5 times to gain admission to St. Christopher's and was never able to.
St. Christopher is also only available, I think, to adults, correct?
He was an adult.
Yeah,
Yeah,
at the time,
Absolutely.
but,
Only
which
adult,
does
only
not,
male.
which does not address the need for
Well,
beds for
and
minors,
understand,
et
it's a
cetera.
whole different ballgame when you're not dealing with adults, because then parents have the ability to
Right.
control more of what's happening. The bigger issue is once they are adults and you're trying to manipulate a system and you're trying to deal with someone whose brain is so severely impacted that they have trouble helping themselves.
I mean, I think you're pointing to a couple of things. One, you're right. There's a lot of uninformed comments made, both by panelists as well as community members, and it sort of was for those steeped in this problem a waste of time, I would imagine, but
A disappointment.
a disappointment. On one hand, we have another group of people that have just started this conversation because they have not been immersed by it.
Exactly.
They've had the privilege of not being affected directly, and that is something we're always struggling with. I think this panel was an attempt to help those folks out to a certain extent. At the same time, it does point to our need, I would say, that the Communities That Care Coalition, that we have greater, more pointed involvement in trying to find out programs, to solicit programs, and work more intimately with the coalition to
I
perhaps,
think that's.
would that be a positive step, do you think?
Absolutely. I've been involved with them on a minor level, and I think that they're certainly headed in the right direction, and they certainly are generally free of many of the political strings that others are pulled by. I think that for those, again, who are drawn to numbers and statistics, another great benefit of the CTC is that they do have access to
Mhm.
many statistics that I think give people a platform that make them more comfortable. Having said that, understand that these statistics are so skewed when it comes to this particular topic because there's so much shame and stigma and fear. So when we're talking about the number of people who have died,
Right,
well, does it include the people who died in car accidents when they were impaired? Does it include the people who died of heart failure? Well, what caused the heart to fail?
Right.
My son did not die in Putnam County. I don't know if he's included in the statistics.
Right.
I don't really care. My
Right.
universe is shattered whether there were 16 or 17. You know, that to those who've experienced it, the statistics are pretty meaningless. Again, with the Narcan conversation, if so what if it's imperfect? It can say, you know, in Cold Spring there was a life saved just within the last week using Narcan. You know, it's real and it's a good thing.
One of the
It should be-
statistics you can ask is how many times Narcan is being administered by first responders. Not whether they're trained, but are they actually administering? And those statistics can be quite startling.
And what's
In what they're not
the
doing.
follow-up? What is the follow-up?
Right. I think
You know,
one of the
the
things that,
discussion on the stabilization house facility that was just opened in Dutchess was kind of glossed over as, oh, we don't have the money. But let me tell you, if that manages to pull off its intent, that is huge. Again, personally, it's like there's no emergency room for this. There's
Right.
no emergency room. So my son comes to me on a Friday night and he's like, Mom, I need help. I can't do this anymore. I need help.
right,
Well, it's Friday night. You call every 1-800 drug hotline out there, and they give you the contact information for all those names that were put up on that pretty poster, Arms Acres, St. Christopher's, and they say, oh, admissions opens at 8 o'clock on Monday.
Right, I get it.
And then you go, so this stabilization center in Dutchess is just for that, and that is monumentally life-saving.
Absolutely. Yeah, I wanted to point to there are, I think this struggle is ultimately legislative, that has to deal with overseeing of, how insurance is handled. It has to deal with funding, it's economic, and we have to, I think if we're going to provide the services needed, there's going to have to be ways of funding it and insurance that can cover it, whether it's seen as mental health or how whatever we call that, we have to have access to be able to, it has to be not cost prohibitive for people to seek treatment and for families to seek treatment. So I wouldn't.
And available.
Right, and it has to be available. There has to be beds available to have.
In real time.
Right, in real time. And no 72-hour wait period or whatever, it seems ridiculous. But I do think that I wanted to, on a positive note, I mean, there are ways that this can happen. I know it feels uphill battle, but I do believe that if, with the urgency being brought to bear in every community, with the coordination of these communities, I do think that results will happen. In Connecticut, in New Hampshire, there's a new program that's was just on National Public Radio that is providing full-on services to addicts. It is expensive, but not nearly as expensive as some of the other issues that go along with not treating it. And it's a host of services. I would look that up if I were you and listen to that program. It was just adopted by Connecticut and covered through insurance, and also New Hampshire's going to be doing it too, I'm sure. And that's a suite of services, both medical
and on a
as
very
well as social work.
simplistic level, if we weren't pouring if it didn't cost so much to incarcerate,
Right,
Sure.
then all the funds and then some would be available
right.
to treat.
Probably, well, there were a few things that I found disappointing about that roundtable, but certainly right up there was the fact that there really was no addressing the issue of overprescribing opiates.
I agree.
And I think that that there ought to be, I don't know what the legislative body would be in Putnam County, but what I would like to see is the creation of some kind of an ad hoc committee or oversight group, including medical people and resident citizens, that would actually, when I answered the question before, you said, well, grassroots, but you know what, that's kind of tough to expect that each individual, I'm not against that, right? But there ought to be some kind of oversight. Because it seems to fall, certainly Sheriff Smith doesn't know at first, this is not his thing, right? So, or Tandy. But whose thing is it? Is it the mayor of Cold Spring? Is it?
The Department of Health ought to declare an
Well,
emergency.
then maybe what we need to do as a legal entity representing this area is to request the formation of an oversight committee that would take a look at the pattern of prescribing opiates.
I think that's something
which is
definitely
fundamental and has nothing to do with Mexican drum lords, by the way.
I think that's given. I think that what we should do is have, and this is your move, right? Where we say, we need to sit down, we need to, if we would I believe that it's overdue to take a stand in relation to this in some way as well, and to forward it. The question is how we go about doing that and taking that under consideration and figuring out how to place this.
So let me suggest a couple things. First, as you started with a statement of appreciation for having organized the roundtable, let me reciprocate and tell you how much I appreciate your very well crafted, clearly thought out, and well articulated presentation to the board. I hope, at least let me say this, I view this discussion we're having right now as part of a continuum that included the roundtable discussion we began with, the roundtable discussion we had 2 weeks ago, the visit by the sheriff, the chief of police in Burlington. This is the third in sort of 3 weeks where we have really dilated on the subject at some length. I said at the close of our meeting with the roundtable that our discussions that night should be viewed as part of an ongoing series of conversations. It did not start ab initio on that night. There had been Mike Williams and the administration here and the faculty, as illustrated by the quality of his comments, and Laura Zafala are keenly aware of the issues, are committed to doing what we can. The board is committed to having these kinds of conversations and to seeing that the administration follows up with them in a meaningful way, in the way that we can as a school district. The purpose of, and I think I know I stated it, and I know we, in our materials prior to the roundtable, our purpose was to hear what we was to seek answers to questions that we as a Board of Education would need answers to as we set policies and allocate resources for the students in the Garrison School District, not just our K through 8 students, but also the students that we send to local high schools as well. I think we made some progress to that end. I agree some of the facilitation didn't really get us to the kinds of questions that we wanted answers, and I still have those questions, and we intend to pursue them. But not only pursuing the answers, but also as we get further into our implementation. The implementation of certain strategies that we agree are likely to be effective for us and that we can affect as a board, that we would have the resources and devote the resources, because we're a taxing authority and we raise tax money and we channel it to certain priority areas. There should be no mistake in anyone's mind, anyone who attended the roundtable, who attended the meeting with Chief Del Pozo, or who hears about this conversation tonight, that it is a very high priority area for us. So again, I want to thank you for, again, continuing the conversation, giving us a perspective on it, which is unfortunately not unique, but one that we highly respect, and obviously we've all expressed our concern for and sympathy for. But it's a voice that we need to hear. So again, thank you very much for that.
Well, thank you for the time, and again, we will all work together to battle this, because it is monumental, and there's not one right path. And
Right, a few people to come and tell their stories.
yeah,
And
I think the more you get the kids and the parents hearing about it and talking about it, the less of the less power the shame has, and then the more the stigma can be rooted out kind of from the ground up, because you will be creating a generation that talks about it, and I think that it's hard to really put into words the impact that will ultimately have, because that's what you're trying to do. This is a vicious circle now. Where do you cut into it? And you do need to coordinate with law enforcement or with doctors and this, but
you've put it well into words for our purposes tonight.
So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If there's no other public comment, board member comment? Moving on.
Well, I had two. I guess just to follow up, I mean, I really would like to pursue the idea of whether we should request an oversight, the creation of an oversight committee, whether it's...
Let me suggest that there may be merit to that idea, but I think first you'd want to find out what's already going on in this area. And it may well be that the Putnam County Community that Cares is already doing something like this.
Yeah.
Or there may be, let's find out what else is going on before we...
and just my other thought, because I think that what happens at Haldane High School is important to us. I wanted to commend Doug Cunningham for raising questions or criticizing the lack of transparency surrounding the departure of the principal of Haldane, providing a clearly misleading explanation of what happened. That sort of thing creates an environment in which, I think an unhealthy environment in which you have insiders who almost surely know what's really going on and outsiders who don't. And I just don't think it's a healthy way to deal with whatever complications there are. It doesn't mean we need to have all the details.
Right.
But something better than what the superintendent there provided would have been preferable.
Other comments? James, Carol?
Oh.
I more or less said my piece for the night, so...
Yeah, I just have, we just got done with the state testing, and, you know, we're not gonna have the state test back until October or whenever, September, maybe August, early August. Which means it's irrespective of possible planning for fall or even mid-year to a certain extent, right? So, you know, but we do have in-house and actually more, I would say, holistic ways of measuring our needs. So as we, you know, end the year, as we come into May and June, I think it might be very important to have a kind of a period of reflection based upon the literacy, because that is a priority.
Yeah.
The literacy performance through the Renaissance measurements as a way of considering possible adjustments for the fall, whether it be in staffing or teaching or programmatic or curricular needs, and having due time for teachers to facilitate that process, or we familiarize that process, and for John to facilitate that process. So I just wanted to put that out there, that keeping an eye on our development of literacy, how we utilize the data that we collect that is readily available, as opposed to the state data, which takes a longer time to, and that we actually have, we're going to probably have some sort of round of Renaissance results later we could respond to in real time, but it's certainly for the fall. So I just want to put that out there, that, you know, any type of flexibility that we can make. The reason I'm bringing this up is because the way the state tests were rolled out to the board in the fall is that was too late to make mid-year adjustments, let's say substantive mid-year adjustments or adjustments to the budget to respond during the academic year. That we made some ideas for this coming year, but I'm wondering if we can sort of have that decision-making process a little closer to the end of an academic year, preparing for the following year, as opposed to losing a year in planning. Do you hear what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
I hope I'm being articulate.
Proactive rather than
Yeah, I
reactive.
hope I'm being articulate, is that we have enough data to say, you know what we should be doing for the fall is this, rather than have that data discussion in October or November saying, you know what we should do for next year, while the students are still sitting in the class. Maybe getting what they need, maybe not getting what they need, but that we are being responsive in a kind of real time. I'd like to shorten that, if possible. That's it. That's all I have.
I think it's actually, I said I didn't have anything, but let me just very quickly on that point. Every year we make it a point to say that our standardized test results in math and English are but two, in each case, singular measures of performance. They may or may not accurately reflect our experience with kids and literacy. Last year, our literacy numbers in virtually in almost every grade were concerning, not in both absolute terms of the year and in terms of the trend line. But at the same time, we also said there are a host of other metrics we use to measure performance that tended to confirm, maybe, I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth, but the metrics that we were using at the time, prior to the release of the standardized test results in August, tended to confirm. It said we knew we had an issue here. So the state test results in August, I'm not sure, were not necessarily a surprise to us. Now, they tended to confirm other indicia that we had collected over the course of the year. So that I think you were putting sort of steps in place, making literacy a priority area for us and so forth, prior to and contemporaneous with the receipt of those the state data. The receipt of the state data tended to confirm what we already knew, and we use that as a springboard into the decisions we've made this year with respect to literacy teachers and so forth and so on. Does that all sound fair? Because I think what I'm trying to do is support what James said, and that is we have lots of other indicators at our disposal. We don't have to wait until August when the state test results come out, and in September when we first meet for the new school year, that we should be able to have at least a notional sense, based on the data we have at our disposal, that we've made progress this year, and we could hear something about that before we wrap up on June, whatever our last meeting of the year is.
Especially in relationship to teacher assignments and curricular decisions and whatever specific supports we need, specifically to that.
I think it's sort of putting all of the moving parts that are supporting our literacy priority, like you were saying, professional development, the RTI programs that we're developing, the assessment tools that we're using.
So I'm not asking for an answer now.
Yeah,
But before we wrap up for this school year, we should be able to have a discussion in which you and John are able to say, in as many words, either we have a general sense that we've made some real progress this year, and we're optimistic about our state test results when we get them in August, or some variant on that, which is, we knew this is a long-term process and it was going to take more than one season or 2 semesters to get to where we want to be, and we're moving in the right direction. But something like that, so that we wrap up the year with some sense of
Yeah, can I
the degree we've made progress or not, we should have.
Yeah, and I just wanted to just summarize it a little bit more simply to say that we have the tools, we have the data. Let's put analyzing, discerning, analyzing and making recommendations part of a calendar that fits into a planning process, so that it's affecting the very people that we're measuring in real time, so that we're trying to provide the services they need as we see them occurring, rather than retroactively or.
But also as teachers are learning, right?
Sure.
The new units of study, as the teachers are learning how to use these assessment tools too. So there's a lot of learning from
Kids learning, teacher learning.
small to large.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it is a combination of proactive and reactive, absolutely, but I think it has to be extremely strategic based on the data that we've collected and analyzed.
There's no other comments? Resolved that the Board of Representatives, let's adjourn. Resolved the Board of Education, this regular meeting of the Board of Education of Garrison Union Free School District be adjourned.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
No abstentions, no nays. Thank you very much. Sue, Beth, Laura, thank you all.